Hi everyone, I'm Susan Birch and welcome to another Health Detective podcast. Today I've got a really interesting guest. His name is Victor, I've got to get his surname right, Sagalovsky. He is from Lake Tahoe, and today we're going to talk about a thing called deuterium and heavy hydrogen and light water and the importance that this has for your health. Deuterium is becoming a lot more talked about in recent years. It was first discovered by, I've forgotten his name, a chemist anyway, who won a Nobel Prize way back in the 1930s. And I was just trying to remember his name.
Urey.
Urey, that's it, Harold Urey. And it's been getting a lot more interest over the years with the effects that it has on our health and our mitochondrial health. And I'm always talking about how our mitochondria are working. So, Victor, thanks so much for joining us today. And
thanks for having me.
Get you to explain all about heavy hydrogen and deuterium, and then we can get into what we can do to help our health.
Well, you were talking about the discovery of heavy hydrogen or deuterium, and it's such a fascinating subject because it's not even 100 years since it was discovered, and already so much progress has been made in understanding the implications of this. So the basic building block of the universe is hydrogen, and it's also what powers our bodies, it powers stars, it powers rocket ships. It's this first element created, and it's the simplest element that exists. So hydrogen, or at least 99.98% of it, has one proton and one electron. That's why the body uses it. It's small, and small means slinky, easy to use. So imagine this, in 1931, somebody discovers that not all the hydrogen is the same, right? You were alluding to this discovery. And turns out there's a hydrogen that has a neutron. And this is known as heavy hydrogen, which is double the mass of the normal hydrogen. And this creates a problem for anything that uses hydrogen, the lighter version of hydrogen, in its biology, and that happens to be anything with mitochondria, like us. And it creates a mechanical problem for us, and that mechanical problem is it's too big. And oxygen doesn't discriminate, so it will also bond with a deuterium instead of a, let's call them hydrogen 1 and hydrogen 2. So oxygen normally bonds with hydrogen 1, but it will also bond with hydrogen 2, deuterium. So oxygen's kind of stupid. It doesn't know the difference. So because of this, a small amount of water becomes what is known as heavy water. And this heavy water looks like water, tastes like water, but it's not water in the sense that your body cannot use it like water. So whereas the most abundant form of hydrogen, which is known as protium, hydrogen 1, is what makes life possible in our universe. Its heavier brother is a detriment to life. It actually impedes the function of the mechanisms of life. So if you look at a liter of water, drinking water that we consume daily, a liter, you should know, is 20,000 drops of water. And in this 20,000 drops, you have 6 drops of something that's not H2O. It's in the configuration known as HOD or HDO, meaning one of those hydrogens is replaced by a deuterium, which is twice the mass of that hydrogen. So this 6 drops is a problem. And when you reduce this, the body can function the way it's meant to, because what this new science of deuteronomics teaches us, and deuteronomics is the study of how deuterium is managed by the body, because it is the anti-life element, the anti-life version of hydrogen. So what it was discovered was that our physiology is really adapted to function. Like, we know that deuterium has been here for a long time, and mitochondria and eukaryotic cells have had a relationship for 1.45 billion years. So why haven't we learned to manage this deuterium because it's a biological problem? Well, that's complicated. I can get into that. It has to do with kinetics, but our bodies can manage a certain amount. Turns out, physiologically, we do really well when the deuterium level in our body, in our water, in the body, is measured in the 120 part per million range. Essentially 15 to 20% lower than where we are now, our environment, where Earth is at this point. If you go back in time, like look at Antarctica, which is 89 parts per million, it's a fantastic deuterium depleted water. It's water that's locked in time from a younger Earth. But right now, the oceans are 155 ppm. That means most water that we drink, or 99% of the water that humans drink, is going to be 150 parts per million. Some anomalies on the planet, which basically led to this discovery, have water that's 15 to 20% less in deuterium. And when these people, the people that live there, they looked at them and they were trying to understand why they were living so much longer, had children to a much later age in life, had a much better health span, okay, much more productive into their later years, all the time living in a very harsh environment. They were studying these people, and this is where this whole thing comes from, because they realized why they were living so long was because they had less deuterium in their water naturally. So but most people, that's not the case. They don't live in these areas. So the point being that if your physiology is 120 parts per million, you can test yourself with a saliva test. We set up a laboratory to do this in the States. So if you're in the 120 ppm range, you have a better chance of managing the fallout from the damage that's still going to happen because of this deuterium. But your body is now kicked into a gear where it's better able to manage this problem. So that's why the entire protocol that the people in this industry are recommending is a deuterium depletion protocol where you reduce the deuterium in your body, but also try to maintain that. Yes, it means drinking DDW forever or for at least long periods of time at a time. But the whole point is that when you reduce the deuterium in your body and keep it there, you conserve an incredible amount of mitochondrial energy, and you limit the damage that's being done constantly to your DNA, your enzymes, proteins, and your pathways that create energy in the body, specifically your mitochondria, and specifically inside the mitochondria, the ATP synthase nanomotors, which is how a lot of the ATP in the body is made. And when these motors are impeded upon, problems arise. And this has to do with premature aging. It has to do with the loss of energy levels, and this downstream creates all kinds of issues, right? Which manifest themselves as age. And age is the losing of the primary functions that we have in our prime by about 1% per year. So it's not instant, but it's over time. So, you can't stop it, but instead of going like this, maybe you can you could flatten that that curve. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. There's a whole lot in there. And I'm sure that a lot of people listening to this are going to be going, oh my goodness, I don't even know what you're talking about. So
well, they may have to hear it twice. They may have to do a little bit more investigation. There's no reason that you can't understand this if you don't understand it now. It's actually not that difficult.
It is quite.
But the main takeaway is that when you look at the water inside our cells, the metabolic water, you have to know two things. One, that's not water that we drank. That's water that we made. So we took the hydrogen that we got from food and we combined it with an oxygen that we got from breathing or from somewhere else, like got attached or detached from something in a molecule, and we created this water inside our cells in the mitochondria. And the second thing we need to know is that this water, metabolic water that is used to run our bodies, that we created de novo, that we created fresh, is also deuterium depleted. It's about 75% deuterium depleted. Actually, more like 60 to 75% deuterium depleted compared to the water that most people drink, that 150 ppm range. So we're looking at like 40 ppm or so in our cells. So that's a clue right there that if we endeavor to put the water in our bodies that's closer to the water that our bodies make, then we would be drinking deuterium depleted water. And that's another reason why I got into this.
So let's go back to the mitochondria. So we all know that, we know that mitochondria are responsible for producing energy. So many people are lacking energy out there. And health and wellness is about the ability to create energy. And when you've got high energy, you feel great. And when you can't create energy, you don't feel well.
It's exactly like that in the autonomic nervous system. It's not only in our conscious state where we go, oh, I have no energy, but the body inside knows if it has the energy for basic cellular processes. Yeah. So when the energy isn't there, then things just don't happen. Repair doesn't happen. One of the things I noticed with being deuterium depleted now for over 2 years is that me being over 50, I compare to the way I healed from injury in my 40s and the way I healed from injury in my 20s and even in my teens. And I can tell you that right now, the way I heal from injury in my 50s is like I healed in my 20s, not in my 40s. So that right there is phenomenal. And what's the mystery behind it? It's no mystery. It's the mitochondria are healthy, more energy is being used. When you're deuterium depleted, you can optimize the way your body uses oxygen. So that's a big key right there, how we utilize oxygen, how we optimize the oxygen that comes into our bodies. So that right there is very important. Also, as you age, typically we lose mitochondria, but that doesn't have to be the case. We're still going to lose them as we get closer to that end date, the expiration date. However, through mitoneogenesis, we can actually increase the amount of mitochondria that we have. So energy is made by the mitochondria, energy is made by the melanin in our bodies. We have these energy producing pathways, and let's call them little factories. And as we age, these factories start shutting down and we can't restart them. They get shipped off overseas and that's it. So that's the issue. Like the mind is willing, but the body is weak. And when a person is 13 years old or 10 years old, let's look at their muscle cell. You'll see that they have maybe 50,000 mitochondria, and that same cell 50 years down the line is down to less than 1,000. Mm-hmm. So this is wear and tear. This is damage that has not been able to be repaired. So there's a lot of things the body does where it has to make a choice between keep going to staying alive, energy needed for basic life processes, and energy needed for repair. And a lot of time, there's not enough energy for repair. So we go hobbling through life just because we don't have enough energy to fix those problems, and that creates further and future problems. So there's a plasticity at stake here. There's not only a neuroplasticity, but to stay young, you have to not crystallize, essentially, not get stuck in your ways, they say. And deuterium depleted water really helps this because evolutionary wise, our bodies are programmed that as we age, every day we accumulate deuterium. It happens from the time we're born to the time we die. So imagine the subconscious and autonomic shock to our bodies in a good way, get shocked in a good way when you actually have less deuterium than more as you get older. So I've noticed that people that start depleting deuterium that are older, you see the results much faster than if somebody that's younger, because the body just doesn't expect to have less deuterium tomorrow than it did today. But you could do this. And in fact, what's interesting is people that go to Antarctica, that are there, scientists that are there for 3 to 6 months at a time, they often marvel at the miracles that happen to them health-wise. Aches and pains go away, energy levels get restored, all kinds of debilitating health conditions just disappear, and they don't know why. Some of them are starting to understand why, because I'm telling them, but they're drinking water that's 89 parts per million. So if you're there for a number of months, the metabolic benefit is so incredible for you, and you don't really understand why. But it's the deuterium depletion aspect that's doing it. So that's why we make deuterium depleted water, because it's really becomes the easiest way to create a situation that nothing else can do, and that situation is a net energy benefit. There's nothing else, like food doesn't give you a net energy benefit over time, right? It gives you an immediate energy benefit through the caloric intake, but over time it just creates wear and tear. So what out there gives you a net energy benefit. Even breathing it doesn't give you a net energy benefit over time. That also creates wear and tear. So, but the reduction of deuterium in our bodies, the average human being has between 1 and 4 grams of this stuff in them. So the less you have it, the more optimally everything can function. So otherwise your body gets confused between what is hydrogen? Is it this or is it that? And hydrogen is 1 proton, 1 electron. When you add the neutron, you create something that is like one of my slides from the lecture is a bunch of elephants in china shops tearing things apart. Okay, and that having absolutely no consciousness as to how damaging they are to everything. So
let's put this in perspective a little bit with the mitochondria. So, how many mitochondria do we have in our body? And, every cell, as you said, every cell has thousands of mitochondria. Different cells have different amounts. So,
sure.
heart cells, our liver cells. So if these mitochondria are basically gummed up and can't work properly, or, if that electron transport chain is trying to work backwards instead of forwards, that's going to have a huge impact on our ability.
It's like having a leaky roof.
Yeah.
So what happens when you have a motor that's stressed over time and it's being held in a membrane, eventually that weakens that membrane. Now, whereas you only had one route for those protons to go from this space to this space with a membrane in between, and that caused this motor to run and function to create energy. But now you have a leaky membrane with holes in it, like a leaky roof. And then eventually, what does a leaky roof cause? It seems rather harmless at first, but eventually it causes that entire house to rot away and be destroyed. And that's what's happening to us. And once you have leaky membranes, eventually that causes the shutting down. Well, that creates inflammation, and inflammation causes the shutting down of that particular mitochondria. So this is the problem.
And then it's
a Trojan horse. It's a Trojan horse. Your body goes, oh, hydrogen, come right in. And then it comes in and it goes, oh, you're not hydrogen. It says, well, I'm a version of hydrogen. So technically I am, but it's a version of hydrogen that happens to have that neutron, just doesn't fit. And there's another interesting thing in biology, and you'll get a kick out of this, is it's known as quantum tunneling, if you know about this. And people get intimidated when they hear anything with the word quantum and quantum tunneling, but it's actually quite simple. Quantum tunneling is when hydrogen, needing to go from point A to point B, cannot take the classical route. The classical route is you have to get over some mountain, over some energy that's stopping you, right? You have to go over something to get here. But hydrogen, not having any time to do this, it just blinks its eyes and appears on the other side. So essentially that's being in two places at once. That's what quantum is. So what it's doing is it's breaking the laws of conventional physics. And everything that's alive, that's breathing, breaks the law of conventional physics at this state, at this quantum state, in order for life to exist. Now, hydrogen quantum tunnels, it's the only element that quantum tunnels. Deuterium quantum tunnels as well, but not the same, much slower. So what does this do? It creates a problem in kinetics. It slows everything else down. So if you have a carbon-hydrogen bond versus a carbon-deuterium bond, the dissociation of that carbon-deuterium bond will be 9 times slower.
Right, yeah.
This screws everything up. This screws DNA replication up. This screws enzyme replication up. Everything downstream of that as well. Collagen. If you, our skin looks so good when we're young because we have this collagen integrity. Okay, it's silky smooth because these fibers of collagen, which have a double helix arrangement, much like our DNA, is just that coil within a coil within a coil in this fractal configuration, all packed tight. So if you have the benefit of the fractal is that it creates this smooth beauty to it when it's intact. And the bad thing is if you start stressing any part of it, it'll reflect everywhere else too. And that's by the time we're, in our 80s, our skin doesn't look silky smooth anymore. It looks like a burlap bag. And that's because the integrity of the reproduction of that collagen has weakened because of this, because nothing is unified in its replication, because the deuterium slows things down.
Yeah.
Whereas hydrogen is going normal, and this is like creating this stress as it's moving forward. So there's errors. Creates errors in transcription. So our cells are just a copy of a copy of a copy. And every time you make that copy, like a Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox, you lose resolution. And you especially lose resolution if you have less energy to reproduce, and if you have stress on that perfect double helix harmonic that you need to maintain. And hydrogen is what creates that shape. And if where that hydrogen is supposed to be, that place that's reserved for a proton, gets taken up by a proton and a neutron pair, it distorts the shape. So this is what's happening at the nano level of our biology. And this has an effect downstream on everything else. So I figure might as well address something at the very root cause, because if you can't get it at the root of something, you're never going to get it at all.
I've got a really nice little short clip of the nanomotors in the mitochondria, working. So I'll put that in the show notes because it's actually really fascinating to watch it. And
it's fascinating because this is the smallest nano machine in nature. It functions much like an internal combustion engine and a generator at the same time. And it has a mechanical way of creating metabolic water and ATP, and it does so by spinning mechanically. And it rotates at up to 9,000 revolutions per minute, much like a F1 race engine.
Yeah.
But where it even one-ups that is that it does so at near 100% efficiency, which the motors that we make are not able to do. So it's this incredible machine. And evolutionary biologists, when they study the nanomotor, they have like this epiphany or even a spiritual crisis, because they realize that there's no possible way that this nanomotor was created by any evolutionary means. It's not possible for those two parts of that motor to come together in nature. So there's articles written on this where they start understanding a little bit more into intelligent design, because it's like if you put an aluminum block in your front yard, how many billions of years before that evolves into an internal combustion engine? It won't, unless there's some intelligent that causes that. Okay, so these nanomotors, some greater intelligence, some cosmic intelligence, put those two pieces together to create a motor generator that not only produces water, but synthesizes ATP. So and the whole point of this is that, not to ramble, but the biologists that are usually staunch agnostics or even atheists, when they start looking deeper at this, they go, "Oh my God!
How did this ever?
Where'd this come from?" Only an intelligent source will put those two pieces together to create a mechanical device that produced energy for single cellular life, very basic life, to evolve into complex multicellular organisms that eventually had a central organized nervous system with nature's greatest achievement and accomplishment in mitochondria, which is the eyeball, because the eyes have the most mitochondria. It really is mitochondria's greatest achievement, is the ability to see and for us to reflect on our surroundings and process that information for our benefit. So it's when you start looking at this, and you start meditating on this, you start seeing how nature is really ordered. Because this is we're not outside of it, we're inside of nature. And the way nature is ordered, it has a whole deuterium depletion strategy of its own, and it's what governs the cycles of migration of birds and animals. It gets really, really profound.
Yeah, it's phenomenal, really amazing, and it always blows my mind, each little bit that I learn, which is just a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit, and you're just amazed by the human body and its resilience and how it works, and then the things that we do to damage it. I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
It's not just the water that we're drinking, it's the food that we eat.
It's the food.
And
yeah.
And the lifestyles that we live. So
you can be healthy.
Blue light.
You can be healthy, live a long life if you are in a deuterium depleted diet without even ever consuming deuterium depleted water. If you're on a ketogenic diet, or a keto adapted diet, which emphasizes the energy coming from fats instead of glucose, coming from ketone bodies instead of glucose. Not only do you produce more energy, you also have less wear and tear. But nature's strategy is to deplete the fats of deuterium and load up the carbs. So if you eat less, fast more, and consume more fats, and really you can get your water from fat. So there's people that eat a lot of fat, and because of that, they actually need to consume a lot less water. Your water requirement from liquid goes way down. And so you're creating a deuterium depleted environment in your body by being keto adapted or following a ketogenic diet or lifestyle. And we're just modern humans. We overeat, we overdrink water. So there's a certain, we're told 10 glasses of water a day. It's nonsense. We have a mechanism known as thirst that tells us when we need water. But so we overeat, we overdrink, and in fact, we overbreathe. So these are problems these are things that lead to problems down the line. In fact, we put an undue, disproportionate emphasis on food as the cause of our ills, when in fact it's not only the food, it's also how we breathe and the water we drink. So, but yeah, absolutely. If you switch to a ketogenic diet, you will have less wear and tear. Your body will be more deuterium depleted. You'll actually need less food. Uh, it's really about you'll survive longer if you program yourself or condition yourself to need less.
Mm.
Right? We can get by on so little, and we thrive for it. We really do. If you just fast, whether a dry fast or water fast, just a few days, you see how your body just loves it. It just loves being empty. It loves getting a break. It loves when the organs get a break. Your digestive system gets a break. Your brain gets a break. We have to give ourselves a constant break so we can reset and keep going forward, because the wear and tear is a real thing. We're not impervious to it, and we have to really what else gets us old really fast is when we get injured and we ignore healing that injury properly. So that causes all kinds of other problems, which causes aging in the body. So it's important that we pay attention. Paying attention is really the only way we can be happy and healthy for the duration of the time we're allotted.
Mm. So I just want to recap on the metabolic water again, because I'm sure a lot of people listening to this, that will be a new concept for them, that our body actually makes water, and that's involved in that process, in that complex 4, where we're producing water and ATP, and it's where we want to have that one proton in the hydrogen. We don't want to have that heavy hydrogen.
We want to limit. It happens if you drink 150 ppm water and you're just normal. That ATP synthase nanomotor roughly every 5 seconds gets impinged upon, causing it to stutter. So you want to minimize that damage. That's the key. And minimize the damage to our collagen and our enzymes and our protein and the way proteins fold. If proteins don't fold correctly, that creates problems. And what causes them to not fold correctly is this kinetic problem, right? The deuterium slows everything down, or slows regular hydrogen down. So it's not wanted. It's just not. It's absolutely unneeded. Now there's some literature out there on the benefit of deuterium for early childhood development in the bones, and it's controversial. Really, nothing shows that it has any benefit at all. But they talk about that because it has a stronger bond, right? So that bond is stronger. So certainly in some places you want a stronger, tighter bond, but that'll happen naturally because you'll never get rid of deuterium. It's always going to be there. And we're talking about like, when is DNA most susceptible to being damaged? Because DNA is misunderstood completely by just about everybody. And DNA, just to cut to the chase, is most susceptible of damage when it unravels to replicate, right? So everything is in its most vulnerable state when it's in the state of replication. So that's where we want to limit the damage from it. So when it replicates, if the environment that it's replicating in is a little bit different than it was last time, meaning there's more protons with deuterium attached to them, more deuterons there, then it's going to create an environment where that replication is slower. And when replication is slower, things don't copy over perfectly, So this is the aging process. It's a brutal it's a brutal experience that we all go through. Yeah. And I, from a very young age, I looked at it like, is this necessary? Is there any way to avoid it? And then I would read all the stories of the immortals, that live for hundreds, if not thousands of years and maintain their good youthful looks. Are these fantasies? Are these real? But while you're here, might as well try to figure it out. What else you do with your time? You can't take any of it with you. So I looked into what is different if they talk about humans, early humans having lived a long time. If you take what's in the Bible literally, then you see they're living 900 plus years. Uh, so what changed in terms of the environment of the Earth? And you go, and then when you start looking at that, you see that quite a number of things have changed in our environment, which may have stunted our growth and stunted our lifespan. So I'm like, okay, well, we have the technology, we're fairly advanced now, we can recreate the primordial Earth and under which we evolved in. And that's been a big interest, not only it's a hobby that turned into a business, because I spotted something that was overlooked by science. And I said, this is a shame. This is a real shame that this has been overlooked. I don't want to overlook it. So I devoted a good part of my life to it, and quite happily so, because this shouldn't have been overlooked. They looked at it even in the 50s and said, deuterium, what is it? Oh, it's bad. It's incompatible with life. And then that's it. They just put that book on the shelf and just let it lie. And then it took some, like I said, you have to be a little crazy to invest millions of dollars into trying to figure something out that hasn't been figured out yet, like how to separate the heavy water or the semi-heavy water from regular water. And then for what purpose? Well, because you trust the science. You trust the science that has shown you that theoretically it does this particular type of mechanical damage to our not only our mitochondria, but our DNA as well. So
I just want to add in there that there is a lot of science behind this. It's not just
massive amounts. The only thing, except we're censored on Wikipedia. Can you imagine that? And I think, and all the time, qualified practitioners, doctors, scientists try to edit the Wikipedia page on deuterium depleted water, and next day it gets taken down again. And I suspect the reason for that is that in the early 90s, and probably even a little before that, there's a doctor, Dr. Gabor Szymlai, in Hungary. He has his own deuterium depleted water company. It's a competitor of ours, but he's also a friend. And his primary work, his doctorate, was about deuterium and how the ratio between H and D, between the H1 and H2, that ratio will determine your risk of cancer. It'll determine whether oncogenes, which raise your risk of cancer, are produced or not. So that's very controversial, and it's something he discovered over 30 years ago now. So that if you lower the amount of deuterium in the body, you'll change that ratio to the benefit of protium, or H1, and you'll have less risk of cancer. And in fact, he's got over 3,000 case studies now over 25 years showing that when he gives deuterium depleted water to people as an adjuvant treatment, he says, whatever you're doing, I can't inform you on whether it's right or wrong, whether it's herbs or chemo or radio-oncology, whatever it is, but he says, drink this water. It's an adjuvant. And he's found, his research now, that over 25-year time period, and it's published in his book, and over 3,000 case studies, he show a average 10x survivability increase, 10x survivability increase for people that were suffering from cancer. So that is quite profound, and I think that's why it's censored on Wikipedia. Now, the water's not doing anything. It's the fact that your body is dumping some of its deuterium burden. So that extra energy is, and in fact, there's another study that shows that cancer cells love water that has more deuterium in it. Well, so that's a fairly recent study, 3 years ago now, that was published. So it's a big business, right? And this is a very easy way to minimize your risk is to increase the amount of energy that your body has by decreasing the amount of deuterium that you're burdened with.
So tell us a little bit about how your light water works. What does that do if we were to drink light water or deuterium depleted water?
So you can dilute it. We make water that's 94 to 97% lower in deuterium than regular water. So you don't have to drink that straight. You can. The whole point is that over time, you reduce the amount of deuterium in your water. So in the beginning, you can dilute that 4 times. The whole point is that you want to, the water that you consume has less deuterium in it than the water that you're expelling out, that you're losing. So if that happens, you lose about half a ppm to 1 ppm per day of deuterium. You reduce that much. So over time, so if you're drinking, whether you're drinking half a liter of light water, 10 ppm per day, whether it's diluted in your regular water or whether you're drinking it straight, that will allow you to take in water that has less deuterium than water that's leaving. So you do this for 90 days to start, because in that 90 days, you will reduce your deuterium level by about 15 to 20%. You'll get into the 120 ppm range, and that's where you want to be. Some people, it'll happen sooner. Some people it'll happen later. If you're ill, you should do a very linear process, meaning that you should take all the water that you consume, all the liquid that you consume that day. You should mix it all together so you know exactly what you're getting. And that way you can maintain a nice linear depletion. If you just want to get there and not really care that you're drinking a little bit more some days, a little less others, you'll still get there. You can drink between half a liter and 1 liter per day, mix that to whatever else you're using, and then you'll still lower your body's deuterium footprint. So those are 2 ways to do this. And the end result is that you've lowered your water. You're looking at, the saliva is a good indicator of most of the water in the body, or the extracellular water more precisely. So when you lower that water by 20%, you just maintain it. And so people spend anywhere between $300 and $500 a month on water, but that's what it takes to keep your deuterium levels low.
And so tell me a bit about the company that you've created, because you were saying that, it's not a simple process.
It's not a simple process, no. So yeah, the Russians were the first to do this. So we have a factory in Russia, actually, and we're working on building one here in the United States. There's Russia, Hungary, and there's a company in China that does this. These are the places, Romania as well. These are the places that have this technology. So we make water that's the most deuterium depleted. So we're the only ones that can get it down to 5 and 10 parts per million. But it's done by recreating the hydrological cycle, and that's done in a column. And this column is roughly 10 meters tall, and we have a lot of them. So in this column, we separate the heavy water from the light water. And the way we do that is we take advantage of difference in temperature at the phase change. So slightly different boiling and freezing point for regular water or light water versus water that has deuterium in it. So we take advantage of that. And but it takes an enormous amount of power because it's a lot of heating and cooling, and you produce very little. So you need a giant facility, with dozens. Actually, we have we'll have 100 columns very soon. We're not even up to 100 of these columns. So it's just an incredible amount of infrastructure that has to be created to make this work. You have to clean the water ahead of time of everything. because in order to separate the deuterium out, your water already has to be super ultra pure. It's a labor of love, really, and that's why we do it. And so, yeah, I mean, if somebody that knew about DDW 20 years ago and was buying it from the Romanians, they would have probably paid $100 or $200 a liter. So it's just a very difficult process to do. There's no standard reverse osmosis or distillation or any type of home technology, not even close, that can do this. So that's exciting too, because some genius will be born, if they don't exist already, that will figure out a new way to reduce deuterium from water that doesn't take this industrial level process to do it. That only gives you enough for a few thousand people anyway, right now. So we're out there promoting deuterium depleted water, promoting the science. We're hosting a deuterium depletion summit with the world's leading experts in this field as well. I'm very big on promoting the science of this and promoting the future possibilities of this for athletics and for preventative medicine. So and the technology side, it's very exciting because you're dealing with things that are homemade, essentially. This is none of this is off the shelf. It's all made by our engineers and our scientists and some very brilliant and talented and gifted people from, it's quite the beginning of something quite incredible, because as more people realize how important this is, it's essentially what we have here is a new standard in water purity. So eventually everybody will catch up, but it's a new standard in how pure water needs to be for human consumption. Hate to put one new thing on us, right? But that's just what it is.
Well, it's fascinating how it's coming to the forefront, because like I said, I sort of first came across the idea of deuterium a few years ago, and then it's slowly the ketogenic diet was certainly one way of managing your levels and making sure you get sunshine and getting out and and then exercising, and then lowering your blue light exposure at night. So those were all natural ways that we could deal with it, but it's become more and more talked about in recent years and got more and more fascinating. So it was quite...
Well, it works.
Yeah.
I'm only interested in things that actually work. Otherwise, I wouldn't. Why would anybody waste their time on something that didn't? So this works, and it's not an overnight thing.
It's fascinating, and I really appreciate you coming and talking about it and telling us about it. Normally, I ask people about themselves and their own journey and what got them into, whatever direction they're going in the beginning. But we've kind of got to the end. But do you want to just tell us just a little bit about yourself, any health challenges you had? And, you talked about as a child, you were just fascinated in longevity. Do you want to just give us a little bit of background on you?
Sure. I don't really know where to start, but my interest from a young age was I tell people I'm an armchair gerontologist. I don't have a degree in gerontology or any professional or scholastic pursuit, but I've always been fascinated by age. And from my early 20s, I was involved in the health optimization industry. And at that time, it was having to do with diet. I opened one of the first organic raw food restaurants in the country. So I was fascinated with how biochemistry of how humans work, and I was fascinated with the stories of the immortals. Are they just stories or are they real? Do we really have the ability to live beyond the 120 years. So I was always fascinated by things like this, the study of aging, the ability to live longer than we're allowed. And so when I had my own health challenges early on, I'm not going to share what they were, but it led me to understanding that there was nobody that was going to help me except myself. Like the doctors didn't know enough. And somebody that is really geared toward critical thought, I realized that not everybody has it. So I spent, I'm a polymath. So I spent 30 years studying whatever interested me, in many fields. And then when you're a decade into something, you start getting some expertise in it. You start connecting certain dots and things, and you start being able to have a level of comprehension that is somebody that is perhaps formally educated in some topic, whether it be chemistry or I worked in imaging for a long time in Hollywood, or whether it's biophysics and biochemistry, and then combined with my nutritional background, health optimization background, this is just a natural progression. And I was very fortunate because I came here as a 7-year-old from the Soviet Union. So I grew up in a Russian-speaking household. So when I got interested in deuterium-depleted water, the place that had the most advanced science in it and the most understanding is in Russia. So I went there, and I was able to speak their language, even though I grew up as an American. So that helped tremendously. So it was all just it was just kismet, really. It's a lot of serendipity that led here. And since I first read about DDW in 2004 to the time that we started the company in 2019, I always was focused on this particular problem because it is an upstream issue. It's something that we can deal with at the root level. And when you start tweaking things like that, like the source code of things, that's much more interesting to me. So I think that we're born with all the tools that we need to really not only extend our lifespan, but like other tools, like tools for happiness and tools for self-awareness and tools for our potential. And unfortunately, we don't have the manual. So we have the tools, but we don't have the manual, as I tell people. So we have to write this manual while we're here. If the manual was given to us, everything would be easy because we go, okay, we want this, page 35. We don't get that. So while we're here, we might as well try to figure some of it out and see if we could leave something behind us that actually cracks a bit more of that puzzle, writes a bit more of that manual of this body that has a complete tool set for like, here, I'll give you one example. Like a number of years ago, I found out that the reason we breathe is not for oxygen. That just blew me away. Like we only need, for the oxygen that our bodies need, the oxygen need is 1 breath per minute. And you go, why do we breathe? Well, we breathe because we need to exhale carbon dioxide waste. That's why we breathe. And so we could optimize these things.
Yeah.
And doing so, we are able to decipher a little bit more of that manual that should have come with us when we were born, but we got to figure it out. So I've been blessed in the ability to ask complex questions and get dynamic answers and really follow through, because these things take so much time to create, and being first in the market with an expensive water that has really almost no, I think there's 1 or 2, but I would say almost no peer-reviewed studies. It's a hard sell, But when you start doing it, and if you believe the science that does exist, and you start doing it, like we did, I didn't believe, I didn't know this would work or not. I only believed in the science for a long time. So I went into this blind. So, but the science didn't prove me wrong. And that's what I love about science, is that if it's done right, it doesn't prove us wrong. It shouldn't. And in this case, it didn't. And so that's why we have light water today. And that's why it's growing really incredibly well, because it's bringing benefit to people.
Yeah. I remember when I was a kid thinking, oh, can we make a pill so that nobody ever dies? And, you're kind of, all these years later, you're sort of.
Well, my colleague who invested the millions of dollars into and a 20-year project to create a commercial plant, he's like that too. When he was 13 years old, he read a book about the very first studies, on this, and he was fascinated his entire life until the point where he had money that he shouldn't have invested into this labor of love, into this wild goose chase, but did, because he believed that this was something really that should not be overlooked, that this is really a gift for humanity. In the 20th century, when we discovered deuterium, that led to atomic energy, that led to nuclear bombs. If we didn't discover deuterium, we would have had neither. And in the 21st century, the knowledge of the reduction of that deuterium in our bodies will lead to longer life and better health. So more will be revealed as time goes on. But I think this is here to stay. And it's just somebody's got to figure out how to make it easier.
Well, I wish you all the very best of luck with that. Can you tell us where can people find you, Victor?
So drinklightwater.com, and lightwater spelled LITEWATER, drinklightwater.com. If you are interested in the Deuterium Depletion Summit, you can sign up for free. It's happening at the end of this month. Of course, you'll be able to watch it afterwards as well. And that's deuterium.
From you for that, so that
that's deuteriumdepletionsummit.com. Simple. And then we also have deuteriumtest.com, which you can find on Drink Light Water as well. But that's we offer a testing service to test your saliva or water. And then if you're a practitioner, researcher, scientist, you can go to deuteriumdepletion.org. And I put up most of what I could find over the last 60 years in literature and studies pertaining to this subject.
Fantastic. Wow, it's been absolutely delightful talking to you. Such a pleasure to meet you, and I love your enthusiasm, and I wish you the absolute best.
Well, I've got so much more energy than everybody else.
Exactly.
And I feel, I should have, I don't have any guilt around it, because it's just, it's really, if you could afford it, you should do it.
Yeah. And
that's what it comes down to. Because if you have, otherwise, what are you out there making all your money for? Because it's really gonna work for you. Now, that said, everybody should endeavor to learn more about what this is. I always discourage people from just jumping into it without having any knowledge of what it is. I mean, this is something that it's expensive. It takes time. So go to our website, download the Deuterium Depletion Guide, get familiar with the information, know what to expect, know what it takes. At the end, it's fairly easy, but you should be well informed, and that way, you know what you're doing.
And just one other question, rather than just jumping, which I think this is what you're saying, rather than just jumping straight in with the water and living your lifestyle like you're normally living it, maybe implement some of those other things we've talked about today as well, so that everything has been done together and, in conjunction.
If the intervention you make is really for the health of your mitochondria, you can add the ketogenic diet, you can add red light exposure, you could add intermittent fasting, you could add more sweating like saunas, and all these are you could add more exercise, and all of these things will contribute to the health of your mitochondria. And that really is where you'll see it. And that's going to affect everything else. And really, these are such simple things, because in our past we did them daily, as a function of life and survival. So just get back to nature, really.
Well, Victor, thank you so much for your time today. And I look forward to getting this one out there and hearing what people have to say about it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Have a great day.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye.